As with a lot of things, women in politics, it's been a long time coming, but she's played a big role in this.
She has, and in recent years there's been a lot of spotlight on breaking the glass ceiling for women in politics, from a woman serving as the Speaker of the House to a potential front-runner for the next presidential bid being a woman. But as we're set to swear in this 114th Congress, still only 1 out of every 5 members is a woman.
And it is with great honor that I stand before you tonight as the 100th woman in the 113th Congress.
It was just weeks ago that North Carolina's newest member of Congress was sworn in as the record-breaking 100th woman in the 113th Congress. When lawmakers take the oath of office on Tuesday, there will be a new record: 104 women serving in the Capitol.
I think people still consider it alarmingly small, but I think for the women it's a small step.
For Adams, who helped to crack the 100 mark, she says she believes it's important that more female voices are heard.
Women have found ways to work together, not only with their female colleagues, but with their male colleagues. You know, when they were looking at shutting the government down, it was the women who came together from on both sides of the aisle to really help rectify that particular situation.
Adams is joined in the House by 2 other female members of North Carolina's congressional delegation, Virginia Foxx and Renee Elmers.
You know, 6 years ago, North Carolinians gave me
One of 2 women who lost their seats in Congress was also from North Carolina. Senator Kay Hagan lost to incoming Senator Tom Tillis.
Partisanship doesn't help solve the problems.
For Fox, who is beginning her 6th term in the U.S. House, she says it's important to have a diversity of voices in the Capitol.
Women bring their perspective, men bring their perspective. As I said, farmers bring a perspective, educators bring a perspective. You need the different points of view in order to get good legislation.
Davidson College professor Susan Roberts says the rise of women in power is palatable, but it is noteworthy that male and female leaders are perceived differently.
Voters perceive that women are more trustworthy, more empathetic, more willing to compromise, and men are perceived to be more aggressive, more ready to take on conflict. And I think some of it's perception, because voters that had looked at the 2014 election surely saw, if you remember, Joni Ernst, who was elected, first woman ever elected from Iowa. Hers was a very much no holds barred, you know, I work on a farm and I've been in the military and bring it on kind of aggressive campaign.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my freshman colleague from New York.
Renee Elmer says the strength of the women's voice is becoming more and more important, not only in Congress, but also in determining who serves there.
I believe we women in this country are going to be determining the next president. We're going to be determining the elections into the future, and therefore we need to have a stronger voice in Congress.
The breakdown is 20 females in the Senate, 84 in the House. 76 of the women in Congress are Democrats, and 28 are Republicans. But even though a majority of the women will be in the minority party come Tuesday, Roberts says the biggest question is whether or not the growing number of women can help change the tone in Congress, which has become increasingly negative.
They can't exacerbate it. Whether or not they can help it, I don't know, because the polarization issue is so entrenched and it's party first. The women may be able to work across the aisle with one another. It's a smaller group. They may have some characteristics that are given more toward conversation and collaboration.
Loretta, North Carolina has a little bit of a unique perspective when it comes to this issue as well, right?
Well, it does. North Carolina actually has 2 Republican female members of Congress, and obviously when you look at that ratio of how many Republican versus Democratic female members of Congress that there are, it's obviously not as nearly as many Republicans, about a third as many. So the fact that we have 2 Republicans and only 1 Democrat in it makes us a bit unique.
Really stands out. All right, Rhoda Bonini.
I really don't think it was a game changer.
Political observers say they believe the second debate between the leading U.S. Senate candidates was informative, but likely not going to move too many voters. But for the Tillis campaign, they believe an issue that came up in a post-debate press conference could make a difference.
There was one. And what had happened at that hearing, it was scheduled early in the day. and then votes were scheduled, and that hearing then had to be postponed later that day. So yes, I did miss that one.
Senator Kay Hagan is talking about an Armed Services Committee meeting that she missed in order to attend a fundraiser, a meeting where details about the ISIS threat overseas was detailed.
But this is a time of war. I mean, it may not look like that to some people back here in the States because we haven't declared it, but the people who are over there fighting it, they definitely know it's a time of war. So priorities are important.
Hagan argues she is well educated on the ISIS issue and has been at many meetings on the matter. And she is quick to point out that attendance isn't Tillis's strong suit either.
But you know what? Speaker Tillis's hometown newspaper called on him to resign.
In fact, as Speaker of the House, Tillis missed several debates over the past few years, but he says that is comparing apples and oranges.
The difference is I'm not a senator who sits on the Armed Services Committee responsible for having an answer to wiping ISIS off the face of the map.
Hagan advocates disagree.
If we want to talk about attendance, that's fine, but there's only one candidate in this race that's been called on to resign because of their attendance issues.
For political observers, they say they are not sure this issue will change too many minds at the polls, but could still resonate with voters.
Now it points to a larger issue, which is, we pay these people to do their job. The huge demands of fundraising pull them away from their job. We should be concerned about that.
Loretta Beniti, Time Warner Cable News.
I'm Tom Tillis.
There is certainly no shortage of ads for your viewing pleasure this election season.
My name is Neva. I'm a primary care doctor in Chapel Hill.
This election cycle, a big number of those ads are much simpler than the slick commercials you see coming from national interest groups.
The theory is that real people, quote unquote, real people like me, you, like grandma, grandpa, aunt and uncle, those are the folks that you'll listen to.
But in order to get through that filter, the campaigns and advocacy groups need to find real people who are willing to put their stories out there.
I didn't even think about it. It was just, you know what, in my heart of hearts, that's the right thing to do.
Justin Ashley is a teacher in Mecklenburg County.
My name's Justin, and I'm a teacher in Charlotte.
He appeared in one of Kay Hagan's multiple Tell Tom ads.
And it just really burdens me, and I want to make sure that I'm not only speaking out against policies that are against teachers and students, but I'm also speaking up for people.
We knew we had to give Samuel a chance.
Telling a story for the other side is Kyle Robinson. While not technically a campaign ad put out by Carolina Rising, it is an ad to support Senate candidate Tom Tillis.
We appreciated Tom Tillis, him being a leader in the advocacy effort.
Robinson's son is autistic. He says the efforts by Tillis as Speaker of the House to provide for autism insurance have had a direct effect on his family.
North Carolina is one of only 13 states that denies insurance coverage for autism, and everybody in this state knows about it because Tom Tillis made it an issue in North Carolina.
Warden says voices like these might make the difference for some voters.
They might listen. They might let down their filters for 10 seconds to hear from a real teacher or a real dad whose child was in jeopardy.
Loretta Beniti, Time Warner Cable News.
Senior political reporter Loretta Beniti tells us this ruling may not move that Medicaid issue any closer to resolution. She joins us tonight from the General Assembly with reaction to the ruling. Loretta?
Well, a lot of folks thought when this decision came down from the Supreme Court that it might restart the conversation about Medicaid expansion in North Carolina. But some state leaders say that conversation is already closed. With the U.S. Supreme Court ruling saying that citizens in all states can get subsidies for health insurance through the Affordable Care Act, states who were bracing for potential chaos if the ruling had gone the other way can now move on to other issues associated with the law. President Barack Obama says he wants that effort to be on Medicaid expansion.
I'm going to work as hard as I can to convince more governors and state legislatures to take advantage of the law, put politics aside, and expand Medicaid and cover their citizens.
North Carolina is one of those states that did not accept federal dollars through the Affordable Care Act to expand Medicaid. Earlier this year, Governor Pat McCrory said he was holding making his recommendation on expansion until after the ruling.
It's a very complex issue. You can't just say, are you for it, against it?
On Thursday, he was not ready to make a decision. He says he is studying how successful expansion has been in other states and if he believes it could work in North Carolina.
We've got to make sure that in order to take care of those people falling through the cracks, that we don't break the entire system for those who currently have insurance. And that's the balance at this point in time.
But the final decision for expansion would need to pass through the legislature. For his part, the leader of the Senate is clear. He's against it.
We continue to have a Medicaid system that grows at rates far greater than inflation. We cannot contemplate adding more people to the Medicaid rolls at a time when we are having difficulty sustaining the Medicaid system that we currently have. So, that situation is exactly as it was before this decision.
Now, right now, the House, Senate, and Governor are all working on Medicaid reform. That reform right now does not include expansion.
So Loretta, at this point, based on what we just heard from Senator Berger, unless they can change his mind, it's out of the equation right now.
Pretty much. If it's not going to pass through the legislature, even if the governor were to recommend it to them, you'd have to change his mind. You'd have to change a lot of the House members' minds. So really, it does look like this is a closed conversation at this point. The decision came down Monday morning. The U.S. Supreme Court is vacating a North Carolina Supreme Court approval of state district maps.
This was race-based redistricting, worse than we had seen since the 19th century.
This comes with no comment from the justices, but with reference to a decision from last month on Alabama's district lines. Legislative leaders say this is just part of the process.
The U.S. Supreme Court has not said that our maps were not constitutional. They merely asked the North Carolina Supreme Court to take one more look at it and see if the Alabama case has any bearing on it. I don't think it does, and I don't think our justices will either.
Now, these redistricting maps are quite important in the political process. Whichever party is in charge when the maps are drawn will often draw the maps to keep that power in their favor. In this case, the Republicans were in charge. Republicans drew the maps, and Republicans have been able to maintain supermajorities both here in the Senate and in the House under these new maps, as well as gain 10 of the 13 congressional seats. But plaintiffs looking to have the district lines redrawn say they are considering this a step towards victory.
This means that the North Carolina General Assembly and our U.S. congressional delegations are probably illegally constituted.
And the NAACP and others acted fast after the U.S. court ruling came down, hours later asking the state Supreme Court for an expedited schedule to reconsider, saying, quote, plaintiffs now respectfully move the court to establish an expedited schedule for resolving these cases on remand that is designed reasonably to assure that the 2016 legislative and congressional elections are held under valid and lawful redistricting plans. Loretta Beniti, Time Warner Cable News.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution?
When members of Congress are sworn in, there is the first official swearing in on the floor, then a ceremonial, private ceremony. It is there that you see time and again the beaming faces holding the Bibles, proud of their loved ones.
Not too many dads get this honor.
For first-time Congressman Mark Walker, his father was close by his side. A fellow reverend and clearly proud father, Jerry Walker, had some advice for his son.
Well, as a dad, just be honest and be truthful and make sure that when he makes the decision that he knows from his heart this is the right decision.
Third-term Congresswoman Renee Elmers was joined by her husband, Dr. Brent Elmers, who looked back at when his wife was first asked to run for the position.
Well, I need to go home and talk it over with my son and my husband and go to church and pray about it. And that's what we did. Of course, her first question to me was, if I do this, who's going to feed the dog?
For some members of Congress, this first day luster has worn off a bit. David Price is North Carolina's senior member of the delegation, beginning his 14th term in Congress. For his wife, Lisa, well, she's cheering him on from home in Chapel Hill.
It's like going to the White House Christmas party. The first time, it was absolutely wonderful. And it's always enjoyable to go there, but we've done this a number of times now, so it isn't quite as exciting. You get used to everything.
As far as having her husband so far away for so long, she says it's a lifestyle that the Prices have become accustomed to.
We're just so used to have David not in office, to be retired, well, that will take some getting used to.
Loretta Beniti, Time Warner Cable News.